correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve. I'm here with my buddy Steve tonight.
Hey, Steve.
Hello, how are you today?
Oh, I'm all right.
So, as we start off every show, let's shout out another podcast on the D20 network. And who are we going to do that with this week, Steve?
I was thinking The Forge. You know, we've had GM Hooli on a bunch, and we've talked about The Forge. Why don't you go ahead and give us the 2-minute pitch for them?
Well, the 2-minute pitch for The Forge, I don't know if I'm going to make it a full 2 minutes, but The Forge is the place to go for, well, Genesis creation info. It's all about making things for the Genesis RPG system. GM Hooli, as Steve mentioned, and GM Chris go through all kinds of things. They talk with assorted people, be it from Fantasy Flight, now Edge, or people that write stuff that ends up on the Genesis Foundry, on Drive-Thru, all that cool stuff. So it's a really, really good show. And to be completely honest, also has a lot of good stuff just for general RPG or RPG writing. If you dig a little bit, it had some really cool. They did a show a while back that was all about layout and stuff and some things to keep in mind in that if you're writing. And I thought it was really cool. That obviously isn't single system only. So, yeah, that's The Forge.
Yeah, and I'll just say one quick thing about The Forge. GM Chris and GM Hooli can both get long-winded at times, so full Forge episodes are what, like 3 hours plus?
2 to 3 typically.
Right. So they've actually been dropping these Fuel for the Foundry episodes that are typically shorter than that, somewhere between like half an hour to up to an hour. And I'm really digging those because it's nice to get that little update. So just wanted to shout that out real quick.
So with that being said, Steve, do you like space games
I do like space games.
and sci-fi games?
I do like sci-fi games.
Okay. How about if we had a space sci-fi game that also has some heavy military influence?
I'd say I'm in. What do we got?
Well, about a week ago, I got a message on our Twitter from some people who are making such a game, or maybe I should say reviving it. It's a game called Battlelords of the 23rd Century, and I actually vaguely remember this. I knew someone my freshman year in college, way back in the 90s, that had a copy of this game, and I never got to play it. But tonight, we have two of the people from the team who have taken over this property and have recently released a new edition. They have something, I believe, also on Kickstarter and are also working on a release for it in a very popular newer system. So with that, we're joined this week by, I believe it's Dave and Tony from the Battlelords team.
Hi, thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Not a problem. Glad to be here.
So aside from military sci-fi in space, what is Battlelords?
Dave, you want to take this one?
Sure. So the core, I'll talk mechanics for a second, just because people kind of want to know what you're rolling. So it's a percentile-based system. Low is the goal for almost everything, except for damage and hit points. You want a lot of hit points, and when you're hitting something, you want to do a lot of damage. But in general, the goal is just to have a stat. You roll under your stats, you roll under your skills, and very much a skill-based kind of a system versus more of an archetype like old school D&D. You have a fighter, and they just do fighter stuff, and that's it. This is more of a point by kind of you build your character the direction you want it to go. And the gameplay allows for a lot of different types of opportunities. So it originally started as a military sci-fi game. And over time, we realized we could run a lot of different things. So if you ever thought of doing more of a top secret kind of a game, but in space with really cool kit, you get all kinds of really cool, futuristic stuff that you can pull out to do some really cool jobs. You want to be a pirate, you want to be running around out on the frontier, you can do all of those things. You want to do an action thriller kind of a thing where you're chasing somebody through the streets of a bombed out city that's falling apart around you as you're trying to evacuate a bunch of civilians. We can do that. Lots of different ways of leveraging the rules to play within a very dark, gritty, kind of a future. There's a lot of people that are in charge of major mega corporations, and there's a lot more people who have nothing or basically going wherever they're told because the megacorps run everything. So for everyone that's at the top, there's probably thousands or possibly tens of thousands that are just kind of nameless drone from Sector 7G.
Okay, so the only thing I remember from the friend that had it, again, this was my freshman year in college, like 30 years ago now, was the one species called a ram python, and but now it sounds like it's kind of Rifts meets 40K.
Yeah, I've heard it described as sort of Fifth Element meets Aliens. So yeah, you're not far off.
Yeah, you can have a Starship Trooper kind of a feel. You can have a Fifth Element kind of a feel. Part of that's really about the game group and kind of what they enjoy, right? And it's not so set. And part of it, I guess, where it is you've got so many flexible options that it's real part of the advice that I give to new beginners in the space is just pick a movie or a feel that you're going for, and then frame everything around that because there's a lot of options with character build out and you can go in a lot of different directions. You can either play two type or you don't have to play two type. Not everybody is what they look like. Ram pythons, you've mentioned before, they're 10-foot tall brick walls. They're stereotyped as being down in a box of rocks, which on average they are not the smartest in the room. But that doesn't mean you can't play a very smart engineer Ram python and have everyone really worried about whether or not you can keep the engine going on this ship.
Regardless of what, I guess, which sandbox you decide to play in the Battlelords universe, the general setting is that you've got these, I think we're up to 14 different species now who are essentially this mutual protection pact. They formed an alliance against external threats, and the alliance is being invaded by the arachnids or Acnarin, who are essentially a horde of techno-organic monstrosities. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they're also dealing with infiltration by a group called the Atlanteans, who are essentially a nanoswarm. And they're dealing with both of those problems, and all these species have come together to form this alliance. And one of Dave mentioned a couple of the themes already, which is one, the mega corporations run everything within the alliance, including the puppeteering the government from behind the scenes. And one of the other themes is that all of the species in the alliance don't necessarily like each other. In fact, some of them have been at war with each other in the past. And so you have to overcome that hostility between your allies in order to get the mission done. And then, as Dave mentioned, the other part is do you want to play to the stereotype of your species, or do you want to play against the stereotype of your species? We don't really force anybody to do either, but a lot of those themes came from the original writer, Larry Sims, who wrote it, and he based the game off of his experiences when he was in the U.S. Army. So there's a lot of grunt in the trenches with equipment built by the lowest bidder, working for a huge overlord entity who essentially views them as expendable. Now, I don't want to say that was what his experience was like, but that's what it's like in the game for most people.
Hmm.
And that those are the themes that he brought with him when he wrote it.
Cool. So it's got some cyberpunk vibes to it too. Then.
Yes, yeah, definitely. There's a little bit of dark future with the megacorps. You're either working for the megacorps, and if you're not working for the megacorps, you're working for a government that's run by the megacorps. And pretty much anything and everything you own and buy is made by one of the megacorps.
Yeah. So if you want to look at dark themed movies that would kind of evoke the feel, you're looking at like Blade Runner, where you've got the guy that's in the tower all by himself with massive amounts of space, and then everyone else is living in the smog. Or Fifth Element, you got the same sort of thing, right? It's Organist Tower, and you've got the smog layer that people get fired because I don't want to fire 500,000, fire a million, just cuts. Or you go to Star Wars, there's no OSHA. So, oh yeah, we don't want to bother with the rail. That's expensive. We can use that metal to make 4 more guns. So you just don't fall off. Or if you do, I'll get a new guy. Up to you. And so it's that dark kind of a feel that's kind of pervasive in the setting that has been built out in the background.
Okay. Well, that you know what though that type of stuff. I mean, there were a number of cyberpunk. Came out of that early '90s. This Slay Industries, all kind of with some of those themes. So That's cool. And those are themes I often like to play with. But yeah, like I do have the quick start for this that you guys have on drive through, and I have to say the artwork is very impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it like you get that sci-fi weird space, but it also carries that dark feel. So when you said it's a D100 system, and when someone says that, my mind immediately goes to Call of Cthulhu or the BRP system. But looking at your quick start, it doesn't look like that to me.
Yeah. Honestly, one of the big influences when we got a hold of the system, we had two goals in terms of the system mechanics, and that was to streamline and clarify the mechanics. Essentially, when Larry wrote it back in the late '80s, everybody was working with Dungeons and Dragons back then. That was the frame of reference that everybody had, and so he essentially sort of moved that to a D100 system. When we got a hold of it as part of that streamlining and clarifying process, we made certain things hopefully easier. And a lot of my influences, if we're going to go back to an old D100 system, would be Top Secret SI in terms of D100 mechanics.
Okay, yeah, I've not played that. I have heard of it, but I've not played it.
Lots of fun.
So, I mean, we've got a kind of an overview. Where do you guys want to start?
Let me just throw this out there because you've mentioned the species and we've got 14 of them. And sometimes that helps people kind of orient towards, when we talk about far in the future, vast setting, because this is predominantly set in the Milky Way galaxy, but there's already toeholds in local galactic clusters. And so the amount of space that's available is vast, which honestly gives gaming groups the opportunity to either integrate with a lot of the backstory that's here or, stake out a claim on an area that's not at all related to what's going on and kind of push off to the side and do their own thing. So maybe I'll just real quick kind of give people a very brief rundown on each of the species that we have because sometimes it kind of gets people like, ooh, that sounds kind of cool.
Okay.
And I believe we have a lot of that artwork in the quick start rules. We'll just go alphabetically. The Chitillians are psychic empaths. So they tend to be really good at spy type stuff because, I need the password. Oh gosh, he's going to read my mind. Don't tell him the password is password. His password is password? Really? Seriously? We've got the Scissorak, who are female battle cats. Only the females get to adventure around. The males are kept at home, locked away where they belong. And they run around typically with a look and shoot harness that lets them basically become a mobile tank. They're rather large, as you can imagine. We call them battle
Mhm.
cats. They're actually sort of like a cross between a saber-toothed tiger or a Siberian tiger and a hyena. They can go all the way upright, but they tend to work around on all fours. Eridani are essentially the alien. It's easiest to describe them as space samurai. They are very caste-driven system in terms of their background. Very much the warriors are in charge, kind of like Sparta. The warriors are in charge of everything, and everyone else kind of supports what they're doing to further their species goals. The Fat were genetically engineered as a kind of a insult to the Galactic Alliance. The Galactic Alliance has someone that's not a fan of theirs, named Uncle Ernie Freiberg, who's one of the antagonists in the game. And he was irritated by something Alliance did, so he just basically decided to genetically engineer something out of bits of humans, rabbits, and a couple other things. So he created what looked like basically walking, talking rabbits. We like to call them redneck rabbits with guns. And there are a lot of them. Because they, well, are rabbits. Humans and edge humans, not too surprising. Genetically modified humans and humans are straightforward to understand. Genetically modified humans do get some interesting little bumps from a mechanics perspective. The Keen are a new species we've added. We're not in previous editions, and they are a trifibious creature. They have a slime coat that's a symbiotic relationship with them that makes them have perfect camouflage. And they can glide, they can climb, they can swim. They make really good recon scout, Overwatch, that kind of a thing. So there's a number of different roles they take. Mazians or Motsians are these little balls of goo that can turn into just about anything. So for those who've seen Star Trek Deep Space Nine and seen Odo, and he transforms into a lot of things, something like that, but a lot more capabilities. Anything they can see, they can replicate. Usually they have to create an eye so they can see it first, but once they can see it, then they're in good shape. So it gives them a lot of for anybody who's played a superpowers game, it's like they have the ability to shapeshift into anything.
Okay.
So they're kind of cool. They're not so good at combat because frankly they don't understand it. It's just kind of like I ooze over you, you ooze over me. How does this I don't understand. The Mitsakans are really kind of, to some degree, a power behind the Alliance. They've been around forever and a day. They look a lot like the Roswell aliens. So big bulb heads, little eyes, little ears. They are, in D&D terms, they're space wizardy. They have psychic powers that let them control energy. They have a lot of really interesting abilities as they go. I'll take a pause here on mechanics, and the way that the psychic power stuff works is you can you can essentially buy powers like skills, or you can put your energy on skills. So you have a choice of how deep you want to go down the quote unquote wizard path versus the other skills you can pick up. If you want to be better at weapons or engineering, you could do that instead of more powers. Orion Rogues, the name kind of gives it away. They're party animals. They love to do anything. They'll do anything on a dare. Their culture is basically run by syndicates. So they have mobs in charge of just about everything, which is probably partly how the Megacorps kind of got in charge of things. Probably Orion Rogues were in the middle of all that saying, let's organize it this way. And they partnered up with the Fentari, who, strangely enough, are arboreal, even though they are squid-like in that they've got tentacles. They got 4 tentacles, 2 eyes on the sides of their head. They can actually see in all directions because they believe in survival of the fittest. Their entire species is about that. In fact, their laws are pretty straightforward. If you can get away with it, nobody can prove you did it. It's not against the law. You didn't break any laws. And if you do break the law, somebody will take care of you because clearly you're inferior and you just need to go. So definitely want to be careful around the Fentari. They're only dangerous when they get behind. Don't let them get behind you. It's bad. So the Pythonians and the Ram Pythonians both share the same planet. The Ram Pythons we've described before, kind of like a 10-foot tall brick wall, like Andre the Giant, but bigger. Not necessarily the smartest, but really good at heavy shock groups. Ram Pythons are terrestrial. The Pythonians are closer to like a big snapping turtle. They do have a bit of a carapace.
Yeah, they're both very lizardy. Andre the Giant, if he were a giant lizard.
There you go.
Does not have little dinosaur arms either. No, he has really big tree trunk arms. They like to run around with what they call a thwackum stick. We would call it a small tree. They like to take said stick and whack things with it. And once they thwack them, they usually thwack for distance. The Rosette are another new species that we've added. We needed something because we added a lot of gameplay in the spaceship space, and we wanted someone to really be there from a system repairs kind of a thing. So probably from a movies reference, since we don't have a visual here that we can share. Anybody who's seen the prawns in, is it District 9? Is it what it was called? Tony, drawn a blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, District 9, the prawns in District 9 that were around South Africa. Vaguely like that. They have kind of this weird tentacly kind of a mouth part and wings. They can also fly. They can hang upside down. They don't really care what angle they're flying around at. Insectoid. And we've got the Zen. The Zen are all psychic. They're psychic healers. Everyone loves them because they're just amazing. They'll heal anybody and everybody. It's all put back together. They're very nice. Except for the ones who break the law, anyone who breaks their extreme code of ethics, and I do say extreme because they have a very strict code of ethics, they get branded za and go to re-education because clearly they need a little bit of help understanding the true way of being a Zen.
Okay. I sense a lot of different
That
influences
covers
here.
the bases. I missed one. Yep.
Yeah, no, but that's quite a wide variety of things and not in where a lot of games it's a little bit different. You've got a lot different in a lot of different directions, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we wanted to give, as we look at the different species, everyone that we kind of have an archetype, if you will, for each of the species. That as people start, it's like, well, this is kind of the default path that it would be, and they have a default role they would tend to play. So some lend themselves better towards espionage, like the Chileans, like amazing at that because they can, like I said, they can read minds and they can figure out where things are at. Mazians are also great for infiltration. You've got your Keen, who are very good at Overwatch or sneaking into places, sneaking through the forest, that kind of a thing. Scissorak are great at making long distance runs to cover lots of distance to get to an enemy base in the open. That's kind of getting more of the military theme.
Half the fun on a lot of these characters, like Dave said, is playing against theme. You don't have to be a big dumb Ram Python. You can, if you want, you can play a smart Ram Python, or you can play a Scissorak who's good at espionage rather than scouting. So that's part of the I think some of the appeal of the game.
Yeah, another fun part that really makes, I think, my favorite part of rolling up characters in this game system and always has been, is there's something that's called the I was growing up tables. I was just growing up when, and you make a die roll, and you might get an answer like, your parents told you they won the lottery. They put you in the best schools and they gave you a trust fund. Or maybe a duel cost you an eye. You have no depth perception. So you get these curveballs that you have a concept in your head of what your character is going to be. And then you go through these tables and you get additional flavor to your character. And it may add a twist that you weren't planning for that you have to try to incorporate into your role play. So it gives you some really cool ideas. And as you go up the tables, the consequences get bigger in a good way, not. So
Okay.
it can go horribly wrong or horribly well.
I like those kind of like life path features in character creation, though. Various different forms of them I've seen through the years, but I tend to like those because, like you said, they do just kind of give you, for lack of any better way to say it, just inspiration. Like you said, to look at it from a different angle, which is I always think makes games more fun.
Yes, it adds a lot of little spice there. And the other fun factoid is this was one of 2 game systems that I'm aware of where you could die during character creation. We've kind of toned that down a little bit, but yeah, in the original rules, you could die and not get done with character creation. Much like Traveler, you could die in character creation there too.
Yeah, so I've heard that. And that's another one. One of these days I need to learn about some Traveler, but
And that's where I cut my teeth.
okay. The first game that I fell in love with was Rifts, and I see a lot of the same appeals in this, that it is maybe not as much of a kitchen sink as Rifts, which was kind of one of the good things and bad things about it, I think. The Rifts, that is, where
Yep.
this is a little more focused. Like, you can still do darn near anything, but it's got a little bit more focus.
And I think it shares some of those over the top elements that Rifts had. It is very much a tactical rule set. So you can't do something like, charging the gun emplacement and expect your character to live. So it's not quite that over the top, but it does have some of those elements, and even more so in the Savage Worlds version, we sort of push that over the top concept and gameplay.
Mhm.
And it's a few clicks closer towards Millennium's End than Top Secret.
Well, that was actually the one other thing that I did wanna get into, and we can get into it now or later or whatever, but, I did see that you guys are, I guess, are you still working on the Savage Worlds adaptation, or do you actually have that finished?
We're looking at doing essentially a 2-book set, the core rules and what I like to refer to as the Carnage Companion. The core rules are basically done. Both of them were written at the same time because I didn't want to develop a rule set that worked for Savage Worlds and then add stuff to it, potentially breaking it. So they were developed at the same time, but we finished writing the core rules first. They are pretty much in beta test stage. We're getting ready to send them out to pre-release reviewers for when we do the Kickstarter for it next year. So I used to tell people it'll be ready when it's ready. The good news is it's pretty close to ready.
Well, that's cool, and, like, I guess for me, that's what I'm the most interested in. I own the Savage Worlds core book and a handful of different settings, but I haven't actually played it yet. But it feels like, how do I wanna say this? Battlelords, just skimming the quick start, feels like it's kind of a crunchy tactical game, which I don't think is in any way a bad thing, and it works very well if you've got the more military themes like you've mentioned. That's part of what it's based on. And if I was, back in college or in my teens, I'd have been all over it, right? But now that I'm 40 something and I have to do this day job thing and I have a lot less time to devote to games, and I like to play lots of different games. So having to learn a whole nother, what do you want to say, higher level system appeals to me a little less than going, oh, wait, there's a Savage Worlds version of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely a crunchy tactical game. There's a lot of material in the game, and what we call it the X150 system in the current rule set. And we do that because as part of that tactical crunchiness, we reward players who essentially dig into it. There's little secrets to find. There's little synergies in terms of matching up weapon systems or weapon systems and armor. But we understood pretty quickly that that didn't necessarily appeal to everybody, and that was one of our reasons for doing a Savage Worlds adaptation of it. is that people who wanted something that, quote that Fast and Furious, fun Fast and Furious reputation that Savage Worlds has. We thought Battlelords was a good fit for that. You move it from a little more of the tactical to a little more of the adventure side, and push the over the top aspects that are already in the game, but that Savage Worlds really sort of encourages. And yeah, we thought it was a good match.
And I'll just add that when we run the cons, we actually run it with the quick start rules. And it doesn't take very long to get people engaged on that. We do a 5-minute intro, and we do our first encounter where we use a skill, first encounter where we do something with a weapon. And then after that, everyone's just flying along. So you don't have to go dive headlong into the full crunch in the deep end. You can always just play around in the lightweight quick start rules and just run with it. It doesn't have to be really tactical and really heavy. It can be a very light, very quick game.
Oh, that's cool though. And like I said, I don't mean to say that crunchy and tactical is bad, because there was a time in my life where I loved games like that, and I still enjoy playing them. My problem is I just don't seem to have the time to dedicate to them to be able to play it without having to constantly look stuff up anymore.
No, I understand. And that's why I was kind of like, that's one of the things we've been trying to do is really expand the options for people so they can choose. Do they want to get really crunchy? Great. Do you want to get less crunchy? Great. Right. It doesn't have to be this is the way you got to play. The nice thing about it is we're really trying to say, hey, here's a set of rules. This is a way of thinking about playing the game. And here's some options that let you kind of decide where on the spectrum you want to be. Take it, run with it, and fun. Our rule number one is have fun. And if you want to do it lightweight, you want to do it crunchy, great. Are you having fun? Good. If not, what do you need to do to change to make it fun?
Yeah, and that I think, that approach is to be commended, because I think that's very much in the spirit of what gaming should be. So, boy, just looking at some of these images, and in the quick start, I'm going to call it page about 22. There's like some giant mecha thing. Is that part of this game too, or
Yeah,
is that just a ram python in armor?
well, we've got those too, but the armor scale in the game goes from body armor to heavy armor, which is essentially immune to small arms fire, to mechanized battle armor, which is just like heavy armor except that it augments your strength and sometimes agility, all the way up to what you mentioned, looks like a mecha, which we refer to as ultra armor, and those are essentially the mecha level armors in the game. That was the other thing that we wanted to do with the game. The last edition of the rules had not been updated since, I want to say, 2000, and it was still black and white artwork, soft cover book. And we're doing this edition. We wanted to bring it up to or past industry standards. So the new version is full color throughout, hardback, glossy paper. We always joke with people, you may find a book that has more pages than that, but you're not going to find one that's heavier than it is. And it's just because of the materials we used. That book should last forever. But as part of that, we wanted to make it as much art book as role playing game book. I mean, we wanted it something where you could set it on your coffee table and someone would pick it up and go, "Wow, the art in this is really cool." And like we were mentioning before we came on the air, I pretty much scoured the world on the internet looking for the best artists that would work with us to get that art in the book. And there's another PDF you can download off Drive Through RPG that's free, and it's called the Battlelords Interior Preview. And it highlights a lot more of the cool artwork that's in the book if people want to take a peek.
Yep. And it's free.
Very cool. Yeah, like I said, I've just been kind of, scrolling through the quick start, and like some of these images are really, really well done and evocative, and show off some of the themes you were talking about earlier, and just give you a sense of the world or the worlds.
Yeah. We wanted to give people options as well. We built out the game system to really kind of go from, in D&D terms, first level to 20th level. Previous editions had focused a little heavier on the kind of the first 10. But the ability to get into mecha and run around battling things that you have to be in mecha to even have a prayer of dealing with kind of helps you just kind of keep growing your gameplay in that mode.
Okay, so now you said before, and just so I'm staying clear, this is a skill driven game, not a level based game, right? Or both?
Correct.
It's a skill-based game. I would say that kind of the main drivers of the sense of progression are going to be one, skills, and then two, your equipment becomes a big part of it. I mean, if you think about it is sci sci-fi, so there is a science piece of it. So the kind of the reality piece of it's that all the skills in the world don't help without the right tool. So as you go along, you replace your pointy stick or your 22 with something a little bit better. Eventually, you get to the point where you're running around with, basically tank guns, and you're fighting things that look at tank guns and go, "Huh, that's funny. You got anything bigger?" And you're like, guys, I need a little help here."
Okay, yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, though. Yeah, so your progression is, yeah, it's more linear and not as choppy as level based progression too. Then.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's very free form, in that you can decide a path. If I want to be very combat focused, you start going down that, and after a few sessions, the team's like, if we were sneaking into buildings and like actually sneaking versus like shooting our way in, we might not get shot up as much. Maybe let's try that.
Well, and that's like sometimes people like I remember the one complaint you would always hear. And I'm sure you guys are at least moderately familiar with Cyberpunk 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Is people will go, "It's so deadly." Well, yes, it is. That's because when they designed it, they didn't want you to shoot first necessarily.
And Battlelords is very similar in that respect. It is definitely a game where you are going to want and need armor. And if you get shot without armor, your existence is going to be short and sweet because 23rd century weaponry is really good at what it does. And without armor to protect you, you're going to be a thin red mist on the wall. So yeah, there is some of that, particularly when people realize how, and it's based on Larry's experience in the army, and he used to joke, "Well, if I've got you in my sights, I'm not going to miss." So it's pretty easy to actually hit things in Battlelords, which again puts that emphasis on armor. But the armor mechanics in the game allow you to customize that suit of armor to your heart's content. There are literally hundreds of armor options that change the functionality and capabilities of that suit, and so players can toy and tinker. I kind of tell them it's like being Iron Man only in the future. You can build out that suit however you want.
Sounds fun. I like fiddling with things. Yeah. So I do actually have a question, and you've kind of mentioned it a time or two. This was originally developed by this other gentleman, and then he put out several editions of it, and then it sort of, you said, almost went dead for 15 years or so, and then you guys acquired it somehow, or acquired the rights to it, or how did that?
Yeah, Larry developed it. Larry Sims developed it originally. It was his idea, his concepts in the late '80s. First published in 1990. Rapidly went through 3 editions of the book within a couple years, and then Larry passed the torch to two guys named Mike and Aaron, who had a company called SSDC, and they ran the Battlelords brand for years. And even though the last update of the core rules was in 2000, they were still putting out source books every few years. So I don't want to say it was dead. It's just that the core rules had not been updated in a long time.
Mhm.
And Mike and Aaron carried that torch for a long time, and eventually they got tired, as anybody would. And we had been writing the books for them, helping them develop the product essentially as freelancers. And when they were tired of it, they said, "We don't know what to do with it, but we don't want to keep carrying on." And I said, "Wait a minute, I'll be right back." And I went and got a hold of Dave and Michelle and Kurt, who are the four LLC members here. And I said, I did a Star Lord. I said, "I have part of a plan." And they said, "Okay." And I said, I want to get the Battlelords game from SSDC and essentially reboot it, make sure it doesn't burn out. It's too good of a game, too good of a setting to just let it fade away. And thankfully, they bought into my crazy idea. And here we sit today. We successfully kickstarted the core rules in 2017, released it 2019, released a compilation of one-shot scenarios called Charlie Foxtrot last year. And this year, we're kickstarting our arms and equipment manual, our gear manual. So we've been going ever since.
Yep, and we've kind of been picking up speed. Like Tony said, it took us a couple years to get that first edition out, all the things we had going on. But after that, we then started the one-shot adventures, and then we've been throwing out side content in PDF form only, in addition to prepping for the next book. And so we're on a pace right now to probably go slightly faster than one new book a year, with Savage Worlds coming here early next year and additional PDF content already in writing. So we have several things in writing, several things in layout, several things final layout. So it's pretty busy.
Sounds it, but that's I guess that's a good problem to have, right?
It is. Yeah.
So, like, are you going to be like you've got your gear book? Was it actively on Kickstarter as we speak?
It is. It is currently running. There's about 2 weeks left, and it is. I checked today. We're 86% funded, I believe, with 2 weeks left to go.
Okay. So now, when you do the Savage World stuff, are you going to be including some of that? Is that going to be like maybe a future, say, a PDF only release for the Savage Worlds? Do you have plans in that regard?
It will really depend on the response we get from Savage Worlds and I should say the limitations of that system. Battlelords is very tactical. There's a lot of granularity, a lot of detail in it, and because Savage Worlds has to run faster, it doesn't support a lot of that kind of thing. So the variations in weapons that and armor and equipment that we see in Battlelords, Savage Worlds just won't support. If I pick 3 guns that are right next to each other in terms of price and Battlelords, they would essentially be the same gun in Savage Worlds because of the way the rules work. So some of that will port over, and some of it will not. But again, it'll really depend on the kind of response and reception we get. Initially, we're just planning the 2 books, the Core Rules and the Carnage Companion, and if people like it and love it, yeah, we'll port over the rest of the content we have from the X150 rule set over to Savage Worlds.
Cool. Yeah, I think, like you said, yes, the granularity doesn't transfer as much, but I feel like the general themes and kind of the sense of action I get from it, I think would fit Savage Worlds very well.
Oh yeah, particularly with the species where we've got like Dave was talking about, you've got your Scissorax who are basically like giant Siberian tigers with guns on their back, and the Eridanis who are these mohawked, we call them sword saints, alien samurais, and with the edge system in Savage Worlds, and you've got these guys doing crazy over the top stuff. The Eridani's doing backflips across the battlefield, stabbing people with his plasma sword. Yeah, I think the game system really lends itself to that sort of a fun and over the top nature that is present in Battlelords.
Yeah, we had at Gen Con, we did have a 1 or 2 sessions of the rules as they were at that time. People had a blast.
Well, it definitely sounds like a really cool game, and I'm excited. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in my cart here on drive-through, and definitely excited to get my hands on it and get trying it out. Just to pipe in here, the thing I'm really enjoying and thing I really like hearing about is there's so much depth in this game that it seems like you guys have really and I don't know if this is from previous editions. I don't have much experience with it. I read a previous edition and felt a little bit underwhelmed, I guess is the way to put it. But with this newest edition, it sounds like there's a lot of depth in not just the races but the world that you've set up, and I think that's really cool. I'm definitely excited to check it out and get my hands on a full copy of this because it is a really deep, cool world, and I understand where you're coming from when you say about Savage Worlds doesn't allow for the granularity, and that is something that you do sort of lose with those systems like Savage Worlds. But yeah, I really like how deep even just the different species have been explained, and the idea of using any of those as hooks for stories or to tell an overarching adventure. I think that's just awesome.
Thank you. One of the goals Tony had for this was really to make sure that we brought out a lot of the themes that were present, but the core rules never seemed to be housing all of that. You want to talk more to that, Tony?
In terms of the current edition or Savage Worlds?
Current edition.
Yeah. We were fortunate that we had literally 30 years of material to draw on when we decided to revamp the game system, and as Dave will tell you, we had 1,000 pages of content by the time we were done revamping the core rules, and we were like, okay, we can't release a 1,000-page book; no one would buy it. So the hardest part was keeping that level of detail in there while figuring out what we needed to trim out And one of the ways we did that was we looked at what was either missing or needed to be addressed from prior systems. And part of that you already touched on is that we wanted to add depth to each of those species. So you got a lot more information about them. We've also expanded upon the GM section. There's information on there for running campaigns for mercenaries, pirates, soldiers, and spies. We've added a lot more information about the Battlelords universe in general. And I know one of the things Dave is really proud of is he engineered the space combat rules that were never in the game up until this point, which we always thought was a little weird. It's a sci-fi game and takes place in space, and there's no spaceship rules. So the mission has spaceship rules. So after we added that additional material that we thought was missing from the prior rules, the hard part was figuring out what content we needed to keep in order to keep that depth. That was a little tricky.
Yep, that also kind of hints at why we're able to really have a pretty good pace right now. We have a lot of material we could draw on that was built out, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to pull that out now. Oh, and that too. Oh, and that one. Still cutting.
Well, since it's sort of a new addition, why don't we go ahead and talk about space combat? I know that can be a contentious issue in other game systems where it can be a point of difficulty to run that. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how your space combat system works?
Okay. So from a combat perspective, well, actually, from a gameplay perspective, let me back up to that. One of the things we want to do is the core of Battlelords, as Larry wrote it, again, drawing on his experiences, one of the themes, you get a bunch of people in boot camp. They come from all different backgrounds, and they may have prejudices. They'll be carrying a lot of baggage or whatever, but they all have to come together to function as a unit. And so one of the core themes has always been getting people to come together. You may not completely like that other person, but you've got to be able to trust that they're going to do their part of the job so you guys all survive, right? So we want to keep that feel. And one of the risks with vehicles, especially with a system as tactical as this, if we got too tactical, you end up playing spaceship versus spaceship. And we wanted to avoid that. So what we did was integrate really the action mechanic that we have. So when people are driving their characters and their characters are doing things, they burn actions. And they have a certain number of actions depending on one of their stats, and they can do a certain amount of things, and then they're done for their turn, and they can hold them back and all that kind of stuff. So we wanted to expand that into spaceships. So they basically are sitting at a station. They can be at the bridge. They can be the pilot. They can be at more the bridge station where they're trying to, manage everything. They could be at engineering. They could be at a gun. And so they've got choices. Do I want to fire the deck gun that I've got here that at this ship that's pursuing us, or that's docked with us, or do I want to take out my pistol and shoot the guy that's coming in to take me out? Do I shoot the guy? Do I shoot the ship? What are my choices? So it plays a lot like the regular game, just with spaceships as one of the things that are an extension of the characters, really. And when it comes to the combat's fairly abstracted if you're talking ship-to-ship combat itself. But a lot of it's, again, about the players and the actions they choose. But the feel would be kind of like the Caribbean, where you've got a faster ship and a slower ship. It's relative frame of reference. The faster ship's going to eventually catch up. It's space. Space is big. Given enough time, they'll catch up. So it's about the actions that the characters choose to try to discourage the closing of distance, to try to damage them and damage the other ship or whatever. That help give a little bit of a feel.
Yeah, definitely. That does help and give an idea of what to look forward as far as ship to ship combat. Yeah. I really enjoy that. I think that's a good take. Anytime I see somebody that's like, okay, everybody has a role on the ship, they're gonna do what they need to do, and you are also independent and can make a decision to do something aside from just your role. I think sometimes it can get in spots where everybody's locked into a spot and it's like, well, what are you doing? I'm navigating. I'm going to continue to navigate, even though there's guys boarding the ship and I could shoot that guy, but I'm going to continue to navigate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that we wanted to keep the focus on the characters. The analogy I use for a lot of people is it's Battlelords, it's armor infantry combat. It's just the spaceship is a big suit of armor and you're all occupants. But everybody is doing something in that giant suit of floating armor. And the way the game system is designed, it actually encourages boarding actions because we still want that infantry aspect of the game going on, and like Dave said, we want you to have that duality of choice. You said, do I keep navigating or do I let this guy come up behind me and hit me in the head with a pipe? Maybe I should turn around and shoot this guy.
Right, right. That's yeah, I dig that. It's that's something that's really cool, and I like hearing that you guys are pushing for the duality of the situation.
And the other thing we try to remind the game masters and the teams is these things are not Matchbox cars you could buy a dozen of. These are really big, expensive things. If you're pursuing someone, you don't really want to shoot it into a big fireball because then you've got nothing, and it's worth enough to keep you fed for a very long time. So you should, if your characters are not motivated to keep that other ship around or to keep your own ship around, you've kind of lost sight of the bigger picture. This thing's a really, as Tony said, a big expensive suit of armor. You don't want it. You're okay with getting it scuffed, maybe dinged a little, but you're better off just leaving if you can get away, because that's what you would rather do. It's way more expensive to repair these things than you really want to spend.
Well, and yeah, and to go off on that, the implications of like story wise, as far as say you end up jettisoned in space, now your boss is mad at you because you just lost this massive, massive expense. Like there's implications aside from just, oh well, it's another Matchbox car. I like that. I like that too because it does push for the players to feel some responsibility towards the vehicle and not just, we'll get another one.
I like a couple of things you mentioned there, like where, for ship combat, it doesn't come down to just, the pilot and the gunner that are actually doing things. There's stuff for everybody. And I actually too, I like the idea that you were mentioning that what do you want to say as a, if you will, a culture, it kind of ties into that cyberpunk theme that, hey, these ships are big and expensive. We don't want to mess those up. Let's get down and dirty where we can just, soldiers are replaceable, ships aren't. And it's kind of a twisted logic, I'll point that out, but it makes sense in that kind of cyberpunk corporate whatever mentality.
Well, another way to frame it would be the Caribbean, right? In the Caribbean in the 1600s or 1700s, if you were on a ship, that was your only way home. If it got destroyed, you were stuck wherever you were. In a shark's belly, in the ocean, in space, you're stuck out in space. You've got how many hours of air? Might want to keep the source of your air still generating air. Or if you're chasing someone, yeah, you really want that ship, but if you blow it up, you've got nothing and your ship's damaged now. So now you're even further in the hole. So it's that feel of you're so far from everything else, which is a common theme in the game, even if you're not doing spaceship combat, that just kind of reminds you that, you gotta, certain things are expendable and disposable.
Usually the players.
True. Uh, but certain things you really do want to keep around because that's where you keep your stuff.
No, no, it makes sense, and I like taking that tact in framing it.
Yeah, and it's another way that we encourage boarding actions because really what they're playing Battlelords. It's the focus should be on the character, and a lot of times that's easier to do if you're in a fight and the person you're fighting is right in front of you. It also gives you an opportunity to counterboard their ship. Oh, you're going to come on my ship. I'm going to go on your ship. How do you like that? And then so you've got them fighting on both sides. But yeah, that we tried to keep that focus on the players. And as Dave mentioned, one of the themes that we didn't mention Battlelords is that you're usually really far away from things. And I tell people Battlelords has a lot of themes in common with horror movies or horror role playing games, in that the characters are typically isolated. You're not going to get into much of a battle on a tier 1 city if all you have to do is call the police and they come in with a SWAT team. So most of the things that your corporate mercenaries are doing are out on the frontier or out on colony worlds or are out in the remote fringes where you are your only backup. And if you can't get the job done, nobody else is going to.
By the time people figure out that there's a problem and that you guys are out there and you need some help, and then they figure out where you're at, then they find somebody they can go get dispatched to get to you, and then that team gets rerouted and sent over in your direction, you've either solved the problem or you may be just about to starve.
Yeah.
Space is vast.
Funny enough, that's how a lot of our scenarios in Charlie Foxtrot start, is you're just minding your own business on a corporate spaceship on your way home from successfully completing your mission, and you get rerouted someplace else because somebody needs help, and you're the closest corporate mercenaries, and your parent corporation essentially leases you out to whoever needs help. Oh, there's a problem with this AMC mining colony. You guys are the closest mercenaries. We're going to outsource you to them, and suit up. We'll drop you off in a few hours. And usually, hilarity ensues because most of the time, just because you're the closest doesn't mean you're the most well qualified. There's one mission we run where you are essentially an espionage team. You're a corporate espionage team, and they drop you into a combat mission because you're the closest ones. You're horribly ill-equipped to handle it, but that's you're just viewed as an asset to your corporation.
See, I like playing with ideas like that. I know Steve's chuckling because we ran a cyberpunk one shot a while ago, and he was just talking about it last episode, but where his character was basically a corp that wanted to be a solo, and how it provided a lot of amusement in that game session.
Yeah.
Think of the company team.
Yeah.
We've already updated your record to reflect that you're experts in everything needed for this mission, and you could make the company some extra money. Just go ahead and take care of it for us, please. We'd appreciate that. That'd be great. Yeah.
I had a lot of fixers and rocker boys who wanted to be solos. That was the great thing about Cyberpunk, though. I mean, you could armor up and gun up as much as you want, but the solos were always going first. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, is there anything that you want to highlight in particular that maybe you're particularly proud of, or anything that you want to highlight for the audience? Like, as a, like, hey, if you're not sold yet, we also have this. Like, if we haven't brought you in with good pizza, we also have cupcakes.
I would say if we haven't brought you in with the combat, it would probably be the dark humor. There is a lot of dark humor in Battlelords, and that comes from Larry's experiences in the service. Service personnel see a lot of stuff that they would probably rather not see and rather not deal with. And one of the ways they maintain their sanity is to make light of it with a lot of dark and inappropriate humor. And that is in this game. You're playing corporate mercenaries or soldiers, and there's an element of that dark humor that pervades everything. The usual way we show that are the most of the characters in this game have a love-hate relationship with the medical the apparatus in the game. The example I give is if you are critically wounded, it's cheaper to grow you a new body from the neck down than to heal you. So what the medic will do is he will run over to you, take a look at you, and go, "Ooh, you're going to need a Kleenex." And then he'll grab this device that we call the hat box because it looks like a hat box, only got a handle on top. And he will place that thing over your head. It will inject a cryogenic injection into your head to basically put you in cryogenic stasis and then decapitate you. And then he carries your head in the hat box with a convenient handle back until they can grow you a new body. So a lot of the soldiers have a love-hate relationship with this thing because when the medic comes over with it, you know what's going to happen. I mean, you're not dead, but it's not going to be pleasant.
The manual states that you're always unconscious and don't know or feel a thing when that happens, according to the manual.
According to the manual. So there are a lot of dark humor elements in the game. A lot of that military humor that both we use it for the players. So one, it doesn't become so serious. The game can get pretty gritty. If you take a look at our critical hit chart, which is in those free quick start rules, you can see right away that again that's based off of military injuries. It's a little gritty and grimy and gross. And the levity is one of the ways that we keep that game from getting too serious. So it serves two functions. One is to keep the game from getting too serious, keep it fun, and the other is to sort of replicate that dark humor that enlisted personnel use to sort of keep their sanity when things are dark.
Cool. So, where can people find this? I mean, obviously, you get the PDFs, whatever, on drive-through. Did you guys have a website you sell through? Do you have some retail distribution? All of the above?
Yep, it's on Drive Through RPG, which is probably that and our website, which is battlelords.com, are probably the best place to get the quick start rules and that interior preview of the book, both of which are completely free. And I would encourage everybody to download them, take a look, see if you like it. If anything, the book is pretty to look at. We also you can order products off of our website. Our primary distributor is Studio 2 Publications. You can order off of their website, and they carry the book. They can get that also to retailers and distributors. We're also carried by Indie Press Revolution. If you're a retailer, most distributors have it or can get it through one of those entities or locations. And as we mentioned earlier, we've got the Kickstart going, and there are some fantastic deals for our 7th edition stuff, our current edition materials on that Kickstarter. Is probably right now the best place to grab the core rules is at the Kickstarter, because we wanted to make it attractive to people to jump in, even though it's Kickstarter for the gear manual. We wanted to make it a jumping on point for new players.
So after you download those quick start rules and you're like, ooh, I got to have this, go over to the Kickstarter and take a look at the option that lets you get the core rules and some gear and maybe some other things. We've made the Kickstarter pretty basic, so we've got just PDF only of the new gear, PDF and print for the gear, and then after that it's a tier 4 really picking up core rules and the gear, PDF and print, and then we call it all the things. But you also have the option at any of those levels to just start adding in what you want. So it's kind of like give you 4 choices, and then after that you can add and mix and match anything you want through the add-ons.
Okay, cool.
Lots of flexibility.
We're also pretty active on social media. If you search Battlelords, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, probably forgetting a few. We're everywhere.
Well, they keep changing. There's MeWe and this and that, and used to be Google Plus. That went away, and I don't know.
And we have active communities on all of those sites. We have a Facebook discussion group that's really active. Our Discord is pretty active. We've got pretty active dialogue going with a lot of our fans on Twitter. So wherever you're at, if you have questions, there'll be people there who can answer them.
Yep. And again, people have questions, and we take the time to come out. And if people have questions and other people can't answer it, we'll jump in. Sometimes we're the first ones that jump in. It just kind of depends. It's a really good fan base that really helps each other. Hey, how would you handle this situation? That's a really good one. We've not had that one come up. And we'll just jump in. Well, here are some options. You could do it this way. You could do it this way. You could do it that way. What are you going for? And they're like, oh, I'd like it this kind of feel. Okay, well, if you can do that, then why don't you add this and this and this? Oh, that's really cool. And people kind of just jump in and help tweak and get that really cool feel that people are looking for.
After 30 years, we've got some really hardcore fans.
Well, that's cool though. That is a neat aspect to that I always think that's really cool to have. A core group that's there to, for lack of a better word, help new people understand and get it.
Yeah, and we, as crunchy as it is on the crunchy end, we still joke amongst the folks at 23rd Century about creating that Hackmaster edition where we have a table for everything.
Yeah, when we were originally playtesting the new edition, we had one of the aforementioned hardcore fans that did not want anything changed, nothing. So we always joke that we should have made an edition just for him, but yeah, we it was streamlined and clarified as much as we could do and still keep it Battlelords.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. I do like, even though it's not a game that holds a place for me, I like the fact that you guys clearly fans enough of it yourselves and respect that, for lack of a better way, history of it to want to keep it close to that, but also bring it more to a more modern sensibility, I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah, and we definitely tried to keep it true to its roots and tried to make it more accessible to modern audiences, but it's still very much Battlelords. And in some cases, like a bad dye job, the roots still show. And but that's the way we wanted it. I used to joke with the team here and our layout guy, there's the right way to do things, there's the wrong way to do things, and there's the Battlelords way to do things, and that's how we're going to do it.
Oh, very cool. So let's see. We've covered the game, the cool parts of it, where people can find it, where they can find you. Anything else you guys want to say before we start wrapping things up here?
No, I think that I'm sure at the minute I'm done, I'm sure I'll think of a dozen things, but I can't think of anything right now.
Well, feel free to hang around on our Discord. I know some of our listeners are prone to ask questions and stuff.
For one other thing out there, which is just that there's Tony's mantra to kind of keep us all centered on kind of what we need to do. It's science fiction. If you think about hardcore science fiction, it gets really crunchy if we start looking at Asimov and things like that. They're pretty heavy duty, right? But science fiction can be much more lightweight. So Tony constantly says, start off with the realism. What would it be like? Look at the science and look at the fiction that we would create around that. Get the rule set created, and then dial it back to playability. So build something, but then you make it fun, right? So we tried to bring that to the players. So that way, if you want to get really deep in there, great. If you don't, great. Dial it back to fun. What is fun for you? Pull that into the game.
Yeah, I foresee myself running this game for some people in the eventual future. I won't say near future because I have too many other things slated to play in the near future, but in the eventual future I will absolutely be playing this with running this playing with some people, I should say.
Cool.
Honestly, that's part of what we wanted to do with the Charlie Foxtrot edition. Give people the opportunity to run as a session as explorers. You're there as colony inspectors, checking in on a colony that seems to be doing pretty well, and just making sure that it's where it needs to be and growing like it needs to be grow. You can be one of the adventures is more of a piratey thing. You've got mercenaries, you've got full on military army, you've got espionage. So it gives people different experiences of gameplay types. And for lack of a better description, for the people who aren't familiar with the game system, a level kind of a thing, of first level and 10th level. So people get a sense of what a beginner looks like and what somebody's been playing their character for a while might.
Charlie Foxtrot is our compendium of one-shot adventures.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think we move into Game of the Week.
Ooh, Game of the Week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So we've done a little bit of explaining what Game of the Week is to you folks. Would you like us to go first? Sort of show how this works, and then we can go from there?
Sure.
Sure.
All right. Steve, I have one. Do you want me to go first?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead?
All right. I have a game that is called Retropunk. It is a minimalist cyberpunk role-playing game. It's from Samjoko Publishing. It is a Powered by the Apocalypse or OSR game, depending on how you want to run it. And it is a surrealist cyberpunk game where you're somewhere between reality and augmented reality. Everybody has an augmented reality chip, and what you perceive as real may not be real. And I sort of haven't seen, well, I've seen and played cyberpunk games where that's the twist, but I haven't seen a cyberpunk game where that's the whole, like, where that's the base pitch. And I sort of enjoy that. The art's very surrealist, and I think that's cool. Sort of reminds me of the 90s movie Strange Days. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
No, it looks interesting.
Yeah. I'll just keep it short, sweet, and to the point. That's my game of the week.
Kind of sounds like what is it? SLA Industries.
Little bit of Slay Industries, not quite as my impression of Slay Industries is more of just a weird science fiction reality. This seems like it's more of playing with your perception of what reality is.
Okay.
Yeah, Slay. We've kind of described Slay before as a heavy metal sci-fiberpunk,
Mhm.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Which people who know the game kind of go, yeah, that kind of does make sense. But if you haven't, that's kind of confusing, and not much I can do there.
It's a confusing game. I'm sorry. I know it's cool, but it's confusing. Anyways,
Yeah.
what do you got, Steve?
Well, I got a couple of things, but I think I'm going to go with one that I haven't played myself, but I've heard a number of people, both on the internet and people I know in real life, tell me is a heck of a lot of fun, and that's Monster of the Week, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game that is sort of, well, Buffy to Supernatural to X-Files, kind of all rolled into one. The blurb is most people don't believe in monsters, but you know the truth. They're real, and it's your task to bring them down. It's a standalone RPG for 3 to 5 people. It's got character creation rules, basic, again, it's powered by the apocalypse, so you've got your moves. The system is very simple and easy to use. And like I said, I've got a couple people I know that have told me they've played this and have really had a blast. So that's Monster of the Week from Evil Hat. I think that's mine.
I'll have to mark that one down. That sounds fun.
Yeah, and the PDF will set you back all of $12.
There you go.
Who wants to go next?
I can go. I'm going to give the proviso to Dave. I want to see if he can find a game other than Traveler, because I know that's what he usually goes for. But for my game, God, there's so many. I'm trying to think whether to go mecha or superheroes. I'm gonna go superheroes. So one of the games we had a ton of fun playing was Godlike by Arc Dream.
Oh.
And you're essentially low-powered superheroes in World War II. And it's a ton of fun. It uses a die 10 dice pool system. Was written by Greg Stoltz and Dennis DeWittler. I probably mispronounced his last name. My apologies. Yeah, you're enlisted or personnel or officers and working for the Allies in World War II, and you have superpowers. But it's more like X-Men superpowers and less Justice League superpowers. Because you still run around with the gun and the helmet. One of our guys found out that unlike most superhero campaigns, that flying is the worst superpower in Godlike, because the minute he broke cover, he got gunned to bits by the Germans. But yeah, it's a ton of fun. The amount of depth they put into covering World War II as a setting is amazing. So they go really well together. So if you like supers, and you like history, that's one to try out.
Well, I've been curious about that one for a while. I'm a huge fan of Delta Green, which of course is the same publishers. And I believe both Dennis and Greg worked. Well, I know Dennis is the primary artist for Delta Green. I'm pretty sure Greg did a bunch of work on the system. So yeah, I've been thinking about that one for a while, and you just reminded me, and now my wallet hates you.
It's definitely worth checking out.
Well, very cool. All right, Dave.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go somewhere else, Tony, with Mayfair Games. I was tempted to go down that path with Blood of Heroes, but I think I'll call it Innominate, because it's a different kind of a game than most of the RPGs out there. I haven't played it in a while, but very interesting kind of mechanics. So setting wise, vaguely like, in a sense, kind of like the TV show Supernatural, in that there's things out there, or X-Files, or a lot of things where they're mixing the supernatural and the real world. In this case, it's literally angels and demons. So you can take on the role of an angel or a demon, literally. And it's got almost a feel like the Call of Cthulhu, where the more you know, the more dangerous it is, where you've kind of got this drawback to doing certain things. They've got that baked into the system, in that free will is paramount. If you're going against free will, then your supernatural being character can take damage, and it manifests as side effects. Essentially, is probably the best way to put it. It's you're still who you are, but you now have, maybe you're supposed to be an angel, but you now have horns growing out of your head, and people start to look at you a little funny. So when you get gameplay going, it's less about the fact that you could stop a train, and it's more about, you really should be trying to convince the person driving the train that, yeah, they really need to stop that train. It's not a good idea to drive this through that building over there. It would be a really bad thing. Lots of people would die, and they'd feel guilty and all this, versus, I'm just going to stop the train, because now you're not working with their free will. So it changes the dynamic of how the play works. And you have powers, but depending on how you invoke those powers, again, you start taking the risk that, oh, well, what you're doing, yes, you can do that, but should you? So it's got some interesting quirks to it. The game system is a very lightweight game system. It's been around for quite some time now. I guess it was published in '97.
Gonna say, I've heard of it. It's an old Steve Jackson title, isn't it?
Apparently it is. I didn't realize that. I had to go pull up the wiki, because it'd been a while since I could remember who actually published it. But yeah, and it was based on a French game, so it draws heavily on Christian themes for angels and demons or devils.
Yeah, that's actually another one I've been curious about for a while. So
Yeah, I've read a little bit of Innomine back when I was into GURPS, because it somehow ended up in my, like, oh, here, it's not GURPS, but it's by Steve Jackson, and I was like, oh, this might be cool. That's a very cool game. It really is.
Yeah, it's got a lot of interesting quirks where there's you have sort of some built-in there's like a double-edged sword to a lot of the powers and stuff as well.
Mhm.
So, the fact that you can detect lies if you take one of the types of angels, but then you can't lie. So now you've got a character that you really want to convince somebody to do something, and it requires you to just do a little lie, but you can't do that without again taking damage, psychic damage, if you will. So now you've got to like kind of like Jim Carrey's character in that one Liar Liar. He was like, how do I say this using only the truth? And contorting things, and you have mental contortions you get into sometimes just to try like, I really want to do this thing, but I can't. So how do I still get there, but in a very roundabout path because I really need to do this? So it does encourage some mental agility and some role play on that to get that mental agility to kind of kick in.
Very cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like I said, Innomine is a cool game and would make a fun double feature with playing like that and Cult.
Or you could do a double feature with that and another Greg Stoltz game I just picked up this week, Better Angels.
Not heard of that one.
Yeah, that's another Arc Dream game where essentially you get superpowers because you're possessed by a demon, but whoever is sitting to your right gets to voice your inner demon.
I want this. I'm buying that. Hold on. That's a Steve's having a party game. That's what that is.
If we ever play that, Tony, remind me to not let Kurt sit to my right.
Yeah. You know you love eating babies. No, I don't.
Yeah, see, I want to get my friends. I'll get my friends together. We'll have a couple drinks, and that sounds like a great time.
Oh,
No, you will.
that does sound fun. Oh,
But
wow.
with all that being said, we want to thank you for coming on the podcast and talking to us about Battlelords 7th edition and everything you guys got coming for that. Obviously, we did the plugs earlier. As always, links to everything can be found in the show notes, Discord, all the games we talked about, including Battlelords and any Kickstarters they got going on currently. And with that, we want to remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.
After the bot stopped, the sudden thought of, oh, I just realized the thing I could have mentioned that might be another hook for people because it's kind of cool and fun. So there's a couple of different angles in the book that we kind of worked in. We love throwing in little Easter eggs. So we had two different types of Easter eggs. One theme is just pop culture references. So, nods to things that we've enjoyed in the past, like Hitchhiker's Guide or Aliens the movie or Monty Python or Ren and Stimpy or Tony, jump in.
Simpsons, Goonies, a couple heavy metal band references in there. Yeah, there's a lot of pop culture references that are hidden throughout the book.
And actually, on our Discord, there's a group that's kind of trying to figure out how many there are, and they've been counting them up as they find new ones.
Weirdly, the most obvious ones get missed. That freaks me out. I'm like, it's right there. How do you guys not see that Monty Python reference? We're not even hiding it, and nobody sees the really obvious ones.
They're like, hey, this is a really good reference to blah blah blah. I was like, how'd you find that one?
And the other thing we do in the book is there are 4 alien fonts that we use in the book, and they are simple character ciphers to English. So if you take the time to figure out what alien letter corresponds to what English letter, you can actually decode them, and they give you secret info about the background and the setting for the Battlelords universe. So every time you see that It's kind of like the alien font in Futurama. If you translate what's in the book, you get hidden info. And we've gone so far as to have our artists use the font in some of the illustrations. So there's a picture of this ship and it's covered with graffiti. Well, you can translate the graffiti and it actually says things. So that's the other fun thing. If you're into those kind of puzzles, those are all hidden all throughout the book.
Yeah, we hooked one of the previous podcasts we were on. The person's like, "Oh, I got to go get that now. I got to go through there."
See, these are the type of things that I don't like to know because then I feel compelled to go find them instead of do the other things that I want to do.
On the other hand, I'm really bad at ciphers, so this is going to be fun for me.
You just go, here, Steve.
Yeah, here, figure this out. Let me know what it says. All right, cool. Thanks. Anything else you want to think of?
I have to wait until after we turn off the recording, and then it'll go pop. Oh yeah, by the way.
Well, at that point, we'll just have to have you back on for another episode. You could talk about all the things you forgot to mention on the last episode.
That'll work. Otherwise, we'll ramble on forever.
And the only thing I'm going to say is that for you guys to choose Battlelords is cheating.
Okay, that's fair. That should not be a problem. I mean, it would be pretty hypocritical of us to go with Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. And say, well, other than Dungeons and Dragons, there's only Battlelords.
There's only two games that exist, and it's
That's
Dungeons
right.
and Dragons and Battlelords, and that's it.
I literally have to buy another bookshelf for my basement because the other two are full of role-playing games, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Typically, the Wednesday after the episode goes out.
Yes.
If you guys came in today and were like, man, your Discord's quiet. Yeah, that's because it's a Tuesday. Our Discord goes silent on Tuesdays while everybody listens to the episode and then berates us on Wednesdays.
Except for Zero and Papa Pump.
Well, yes. Zero.
They message me while I'm on my way to work.
They're the only ones up that early. Unless it's me. I'm usually up that early.